Hey guys, Corey here with the next video in our Python tutorial series. So I said we were going to work on cleaning up the client, and actually we're going to clean up the server a little bit too. We're going to make them into classes, because if I want to import, say, a server into, maybe I wrote some code for the SQL library that's a database. You know, I want to practice my database work. Well, I want to import that server and maybe be getting clients from it so I can deal with that. In the sense that I can be practicing my database work by having a server sending clients my way, and I can practice, you know, having traffic, keeping track of who's on it, whatnot. I can also more easily access variables and such from it. If I want to import it in general, just to get the nice functions that we spend a lot of time writing, I'll need to make it a class anyway, because a lot of that code, for example, if we go to just in the client itself, this code, all this junk, if I import this is all going to start running and such when we import the library. It's not even useful for us to use at all. We won't even really have access to it if we import it. It's just not benefiting us at all. The only thing that we could use or make really good work of is when we import this kind of client library. We have these two functions, but by themselves they don't have a lot of work. I mean, we can use them for some purposes, but we can get some more use out of them, you know, for how much work we put into making them. So I'm actually going to start off with the client, or the server, because it's going to be the easiest guy to work with. Right before we get to work, I'm going to import one library called args, like that. Okay. It's a useful library in the sense that if you want to make things able to add in command line arguments. You know, you've seen me in the past videos constantly be calling Python, bclient.py and such, and inside of the code, the parameters for where the client will connect and what port are already in there, right? If I want to change that, I have to go in and change the code, right? But say I want to make like 10 clients and I want them to all go out to different places. Well, I need a system to where I can change that, to where I can change what address they're going to, what port they're going to, and it makes it a lot more adaptable. And so there's a couple ways we're going to do that. Is one, if same with the server. If I want the server to be bound on different addresses, and I want him to be bound on different ports, like say I have 5 different servers, one for each type of thing I'm working on. Maybe I'm doing different database work for one for managing IPs, one for managing passwords, like kind of like a user input password kind of deal. If I want servers on different IPs and such, I'll need a way to do that. So first off, I'm going to make this a class. I'm going to call it server. It's not going to import from anything. You can make it, you know, if you really want to import from like threading or something, in case you want to have a bunch of servers running, but I'm only running one server, so I don't need that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first make its initialization function. What's it going to take in? Well, we only need 2 things to access our server. We need the IP, port, just like that. And we'll go self.ip equals IP, self.port equals port. Kind of like that. Pretty quick, pretty simple. And then we can basically do the rest of the stuff right in here. Just basically right in. Make that IP and port. Now you can take this out of here, server start. I'm going to do it for my testing purpose so I can see, you know, where it's at when it's working and whatnot. I'm going to add in one more argument, by the way. I like to call it backlogs equals 100. Okay, so I added in one more parameter called backlogs for how many people will let it be backed up before it starts rejecting people. I'm going to call it backlogs just because it's a nice name for me to remember. I'm going to give it a default value because every time I start up a server, I know 9 times out of 10 I'm just going to put this 100 in here just because it's the default value I like to use. Now, every time I open it up, do I want to have to remember to put in the 100 every time? No, that's really annoying. It's going to get old real fast. So I make it a default value by putting this equal sign. So if I put in nothing for backlogs, it automatically becomes 100. And we'll so on do sock.less than 100. So I don't need to worry about it. It's fine. It's taken care of. But I can still change it if I want to. Like if I put in 250, if I put in an IP, a port, and then 250, it would make backlogs 250. So it's not a big deal. I'm going to call this the main function, and I'm going to indent region. Okay. Is that lined up correctly? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to make a function called main that goes right inside here. Whenever I call main, it's just going to do what the server's been doing before. It's just going to do... I got to put a self there to make this accessed by everybody. Remember, it's not a global variable. It only exists inside that function unless I put the self outside of it. Okay, cool. That's all we need to do there. So pretty straightforward. We can call this main function whenever we want. So we don't need to start a server off the bat. So if we create a server class, we can tell it when to start, which is useful if you're having a program that's going to run a server but needs to do some initialization stuff first. You don't know when it'll be done. You could also add in a couple other functions that you normally wouldn't have been able to access with server, because the server's caught in a loop. There's a couple other functions that we may want to add in. Now that we're able to access variables pretty easily from the server whenever we want, like say it's running off on its own, we've imported it to a program, and it's running off on its own, accepting clients, doing whatever we really need it to do, we can maybe check some variables on it, like check current clients, current connections coming in. So let's make a variable for that, and go self.clients, I'm going to call it current connections, current connections equals just a blank list. We don't have anybody yet. And maybe every time I get somebody, connections dot append, I will throw in a list of the connection and the address. Okay. Ooh, actually, better idea. Right here. So I will throw in the IP address of the connection so I can view that, and then I'll throw in the client. So say I want to reject somebody. Say I see someone on my server that I'm like, oh, I don't want them here. Okay. Maybe I lay down the ban hammer on somebody. If I have this client object stored, all right, I can tell it when to quit. I can tell a thread when to stop. So if I see, oh, that guy shouldn't be here, I can tell that client when to stop. So that's going to be useful. But how do we access that? We'll make display clients, and we'll go self, and we'll say for con in self.current. I'm going to rename it as self.currentCons, just so I don't have to type out the whole thing every time. Print IP con1. Because remember, we put in a list. So when I'm asking that, no, okay, that's good. So a con10, yeah. So when I get this list back, it's going to give us this list, and I want to know the IP, right? So I want to see all my clients by IP. So I will just display the con1, okay? Another thing we could do is we could even display it by number. We could even, just to show you how many connections are on here, I could say for con in range. Another thing we could do, if you really want to be fancy about it, comes out as string anyway. Rename this num, print str num. There we go. So what did I do? Well, instead, maybe I want it to be listed by numbers, like client, like 1, and then this is IP 2, and then the IP 3, and the IP, something like that, right? So I can, it'll help me more easily pick. Oh, I want the 4th guy off, and I can pass that number into a function. So that's something I can do here. So it'll just do the number and the range of the length of the connections. And it'll start off at 0 and go to the length -1. So I'm just going to, for ease of people viewing it, because it's non-inclusive, it goes to whatever number I put in here -1. So then I would just add that if I want to go the whole length of it. But I do have to change this to make self.current cons. You know what, in fact, I'll change this just to make it easier to access indices. Current cons, num. I don't even need that anymore. Okay. Current cons, num. There we go. So I'm going to access the index, and then at the first index, or this element right here, the second element in the little array that we're going to get back from that, it's going to be the IP, right? So I'm just going to go string, whatever number we're on, because it starts at 0, but that's really the first client, so I'm just going to print out number +1. And then the IP, something I'm going to do actually now is actually go put a dot after the number, just because I like to have a 1 dot number. No biggie there. Okay. And then we'll go def delete client index. And so if I see number 3 and he's somebody I don't want on, I'll go, oh, delete number 3. So I'll call delete client and put it in a 3. But really that's the second index because of how I chose to print it out. You could have it as the 0, first, second, third, people. It really depends up to you. And so we'll go self.current, the client in question is equal to the self.cons index, and we want the actual client, right? We want the object that is connecting with him, right? So I'm going to get the first index back from that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to client.quit, which is a custom function that we're going to make inside of the client or the client handler once we kind of tidy them up a little bit. And then we will do self.current cons .pop index -1. Oh, and I gotta put -1 up here too. Okay, we're just gonna pop off the index -1. We're just gonna pop them out. And that's it for really the delete clients. If you want to get fancy, you could put in like delete all clients. Delete all clients. Maybe you want to shut down the server. For x in range 1 self.current cons self.delete client x +1. Because we gotta put in the index of the guy in the array, which, if we start at 0, we want to delete the 0th client, we have to tell it 1 because of how I chose to do it. Some pretty easy functions right here. Just gotta put in a little bit of self right there. Yeah, so that's pretty good. I know sometimes I even put in like delete ranges if I know there's one guy connecting multiple times, but we don't need to go that serious at all. So the server's looking pretty good. You know what, I said I wouldn't, but in fact, if I have this imported and I want it to be running main off on its own, I will need to import the threading class. Because if I import it to code and I tell it to go run on its own, well, my program is going to wait for it to finish running before it continues, unless it's a thread. So if we want to import this, we will want to put that in there. And then we got to call the super thing, because now that's a thread. Oh, okay, that's supposed to go in it. Super. And then we will go server, and we will go self, and we will go dot underscore init, and there's that. Okay, great. That'll call the threading dude, and then, in fact, we'll just call this run then. Don't need to call it main then. It's looking like a pretty fancy server if I do say so myself. Conduct close, sector close. We don't even need con anymore. That's from tutorial 1, man. Not and connections. We'll transpose these guys to bring back up here. Whoops, gonna have them out. That looks good. So if we ever have a reason to break out, we'll just shut down, and then we will do delete all clients. Great. Looks good. Okay, and if you wanted, you could add in a function that you call that will shut this down. But so now for testing purposes, or basically command line ability, there's a special little function that you may see a lot. It's called if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals underscore underscore main underscore underscore. So what this means is if I call this myself as the main user, all right, or the main system, the computer itself opens up this program, we are main. There's a variable under the hood that keeps track of who is running this current little library, this little module, as Python likes to call it. If another piece of my code imported this, like say that database code I hypothetically had, say imported this, name would not be main. Name would be database module or something. If I open this myself from the command line, from double clicking in my GUI or whatever, as long as I'm the one to open it, the name will be main. Okay, so you put this in your code for a piece of code that only runs when you open it. And why is that useful? Well, if I say open the server, it's presumed that I want to run it. I want the server to kick up, start off, do what it needs to do, and so I can test it and whatnot. If another program's importing it, it probably doesn't want it to just kick off right off the bat. What if every time you imported a module and it just immediately started up and imported threading and all of the threads started running all over the place? It's not productive for us. So we set this so if I'm opening it, I know I want it to run right off the get-go. So I'm going to put if name equals main to protect against that. Okay, if I'm opening it from another source or a program's opening it from another source. So I'm going to start working with the argparse library. Okay, and I will type out a couple things, and then we'll go over what they mean. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm not done filling out these yet as well, is I'm saying parser equals argparse.argument parser. So I'm making something that monitors the command line. So when this is open, it'll go and it will look to see if I entered command line arguments. And I have to tell it what to look for, because it doesn't immediately know what arguments to look for. So I'm adding arguments to it to look for, okay? And so how you add an argument is there's two ways to do it. Host. There's the way I'm doing it now, where you give it a shortcut, so I can do, actually it's just one dash if I remember right, and a double there. So you give it a short version, like you'll see me do cd, which is short for change directory on the command line, right? I'm just going to put it like this because a lot of Linux commands are like this, and I like the look of these commands. You do not Actually, you do need to put the dash and the double dash. That's how you let it know that it's going to be an optional argument. I'll show you a non-optional argument in a second. So if you put the dash and then a short little thing and then a double dash in that, it makes it an optional argument. So I don't have to put these in the command line. It'll look for them and it'll get those values back. But if I don't put them in, it won't freak out at me. It won't be like, dude, you didn't put these in. This won't work. Everything's falling apart. No, it'll be okay. If I was doing just like this, if I did this, okay, when you see an argument like this, like if I just did host like this, or if I did HO with none of this dash or double dash, that means it's a required argument. So if you're making an optional, you need to put these two forms with the dash and the double dash. And I've played around with it, yeah, and if you totally like don't put the double dash here and stuff, it will break. But you can play around with yourself and figure out what arguments it lets in and whatnot, so you better understand what you need to make your arguments for, or how you need to name them. Okay. So now I can put a couple things. I can put help. So if you ever call, the reason I didn't do just dash h for a host, and I did because dash h like that is it's an optional parameter already in like Linux-based commands. And when I'm calling this program, it'll actually do it for us if I do the dash h. Now that I have an argument parser, dash h is for help, and you can do double dash help as well. It tells you what all the command line arguments mean. So I'm going to put these in here. The host IP the server will bind to. Pretty self-explanatory there. And then I'll go the host port the server will bind to. Backlogs, the number of backlog connections it will allow, connections allowed until it rejecting further traffic. Okay. Now there's one thing you can do as well. Sometimes it's safe to do this. It makes it really nice for you to declare a type. Makes it better for your code. I believe you don't have to do this because I've actually not put it in a couple times. But if you get rid of the ambiguity of what type the argument is, like if you tell them it has to be an int, it saves trouble later if somebody's putting in bad inputs, and it kind of helps deal with that a little bit. In fact, this will take over for you, the argument parser, and will tell you you didn't put in the right type of argument. So it does a bit of the air handling for you, and it's really convenient. So the host is going to be a string. The port number is going to be an int. The number of backlogs will also be an int. Now what I can do is I can say s equals server. And I can do, well, first off I have to parse them. So I go parser.parse args. See, you see camel case and underscore. A couple people must have been working on this library together. It's always fun to work with your buddies on code. Parseargs. Args equals, there we go. Okay. So if I want to access it'll store all the arguments. It'll go into the command line and be like, what did they put in? It'll sort them out and be like, oh, we put an HO before this guy, so I know this is for host and whatnot, and you'll put them inside of args. And if I want to access them, say I want to access the host part of args, I would go args.host, like that. You refer to it by the full name, not the short name. Args.port, args.backlog. Okay, cool. And now, since I want the server to run, I'll say s.start, like that. Now there's one problem. These arguments are optional. Because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, hey, if they don't put in anything, I'll probably have it default to 127.0.0.1, and I'll have it default to 5,000 and such. But the thing is, if I don't put in anything, it's null, right? And so it's just going to put in args.host equals null, args.port equals null, args.backlogs equals null, into server. And all that will be null, and our server will have no idea what to do. So I'm just going to make a quick little thing. I'm going to say if args.host equals none, then I will just args.host equals 127.0.0.1. Okay. I'll do the same for everyone. Args.host. That's supposed to be port. So I'm just making it so if they don't put anything to the actual argument, I'm kind of setting like my own default system, which is good. So if I'm just running it from the command line like normal and just testing on my own computer, I haven't forced myself to put in anything. Okay. Now you may be wondering and say, well, hey, we put a default value here. But that's only if I didn't put in anything into the backlog spot. But here I did. I put args.backlogs. If this area wasn't here, if I put args.backlogs in here and args.backlog is none, it'll still count as if I put none in for backlogs. Okay, so that's why I have to do that important default. One other thing we may want to do after we save it is I may want to say, hey, if I'm importing this server into a database code and I'm still just testing it on my own computer, and I've imported server and I just want to crank it out real fast. I don't have to type in the IP and the port every time. I can still also up here put default values if I really wanted to. Okay. You may or may not want these. You may want it so that every time they explicitly put in the IP and the port to know that you aren't accidentally conflicting with some other process on your computer. Like say you're using port 5000 and some things are going wrong and you don't know why in your code and your server's not working and you think you just imported a bad library. Well, it could have been it isn't connecting right because it's interfering with some process on your computer. So forcing you to put that in there will make you maybe think about, oh, maybe let me try another port and see if that works. Whether if it's just taking care of under the hood, it may not pass through your head to try that. Okay, so not bad. Nice. Looking good. We've added a couple nice features to this. So now the client. So a bonus of making a class is we can finally put these classes, or these functions down under. Might as well just define it right here. I'm going to import arg parse as well. Here, and we'll do the same kind of setup. Okay, in fact, I'm just going to go right to my if name equals main. Might as well. If I go to B server, whoops. I don't know why I have that bar on the side. Honestly, it gets my way over there more. I wanted to try it out one day, but never put it back. Basically, this is the exact same. The only thing I have to change, if I just kind of boop-a-doop in there, is one I have to make sure everything's lined up correctly, and it's not. The joys of programming. The only thing I have to change is in the help text, because we talked about the server at all. Alright, come on. Python, sometimes the indent base is not the most fun. Watch somebody try to indent their code correctly. It's a blast. Alright, fine. We'll connect to... Alright, so we're just going to make it clear for our user. And we can get rid of backlogs, because our client doesn't know what backlogs are. Okay, and we will just say, we'll call it client. So C equals client. And we will say args.host, args.port, c.start, we will make him a threader as well. Because if I have a client to the side, I have a program running, and every once in a while he's got to go check with the home server. For example, I've done this with robots. Is I have a client kind of class that's sitting off to the side and just chilling, and the robot will be like, hey, by the way, can I just check with home base whether or not I'm supposed to be doing anything? And the client's like, yeah, I got you. It'll ask back, come and return the data. So that's something I like to do, is I like to make it import threading for that reason. But actually for now, I don't want to thread too many things, so I'm going to keep it not threading. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to take that out. Because more often than not, I don't want my client threaded because he's like a chat or something, and I want to wait until he gets info back, so I don't mind waiting. Plus, the time he talks to the server is not long. All right, let's make our def init. So we're going to take a host and a port, and we're going to, well, we called that IP in the last one. So I'm just going to call it IP just to stay the same. Self.ip equals IP, self.port equals port, self.sock equals socket.socket, sock.connect, IP port. Okay, connect, and then once he connects, we'll call a self.main function, make a main function for him as well. In fact, I don't even need to do that actually. In fact, I will do something pretty sneaky. I will go. I've done this before. I'll do send command. Whoops. First off, I'm going to take these guys right here, Control C them, just stick them inside the class now at the bottom. Indent region. Just gotta indent those guys. Alright, looks indented properly. Alright, sweet. So now we got those guys out of the way. Look how much cleaner it looks. Okay, not insanely clean yet. So I can get rid of all this stuff because we have that done in the initialization function. Now what I can do is I can indent this. Instead of waiting for input, I can do self, and I can do message. So I can input that. I can call it whenever I want. So if I import this program, I can call it. I can call the send command whenever I want. So it's not sitting there in a loop or anything. It's not blocking us with the input command or anything. I can, whenever I want, just say, hey, send command, and tell the client to send that command, get the data back, which is useful for us. But if they put in right quit, we'll do self.sock.close. Now I just need to put in a bunch of self. So now that we have this inside of a class, you'll remember, take these out of here. We won't need to do these parameters, so it'll make our functions a little bit cleaner. Depends on whether or not you like seeing selfs everywhere. I just need to put self. Looks good. Can't see a problem with anything. Now I will add in, going to take out the con, put it in self. self.sock .sock and there, that looks pretty good for that. Now what we can do here for testing purposes, if we're running this, we obviously want to make a client that's doing something. We can go while this is only for testing purposes, since this is in the if name equals main, message equals message not equal right quit. Basically, I'm going to have before in the main, and we'll just get input there, and then now instead of just doing all that fancy stuff, I can just go c.send command. Send command message. That's what I call it, right? Send command message. And now that the client is now in class as well, if we want to be debugging things and making sure they're in sync, because before when I had that error and I was making sure the functions matched, well, they were different, right? Because one was just a bunch of functions with like, and I had to pass in connections. I had to make sure I was passing in things right, that I was calling the right parameters and stuff. But with the class, I was just calling a bunch of self and accessing parts of the class instead of having to rely on inputting things. So it was hard to debug them and make sure they're going the same step by step. It wasn't too difficult, but it was more difficult since they weren't exactly the same. And now that I've basically made receive file and send file the exact same functions between the two, it's going to make it a little bit nicer for us to... Just going to look around. It's going to make it a little bit nicer for us to debug it and just make sure that everything is going to stay in sync by making sure all the functions are the same. I'm just going to do def and be like close client self .sock .close. And then, you know what I'll do? Is I'll do one thing here. I'll add in one extra little thing called open client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so you can check if your client's actually open, because that'll be good too. Self.open equals true. If self.open indent the region, else just give me a print sorry, I'm blanking. I realize I don't want these prints, because if we're importing into the code, you don't want like part of your code just printing things without you knowing. So instead of doing that, I'll have a variable called self.results as well. And we will, every time we get a message back, we will return it. Just so if you ever want to check if something was like, so say you'd tell the client to send a file, and you want to make sure that it was A-OK sent, you would check the results, and you would say, if results equal file uploaded, or if results equal file downloaded, continue, because we're good to go at that point. Because we don't want print statements. If I import a piece of code, I don't want to just like printing everything, because if I have multiple things printing as well, like if I have things printing in my code and something else is printing as well, they're going to clash, and things will go very bad for us. Else result equals socket not open. self.open equals false. And so if it's closed down, I'll just make it false. So we'll check, do we have an open connection? If they put in right quit, I don't want this anymore. Just realized I don't want the while loop anymore. Are these lined up right? They are not. I will worry about that when I'm testing off screen, so you guys don't have to sit through all the errors, because that's going to get boring real fast watching me indent all of that. One other thing is we'll go close client. So if self.open, so if we're open, results equals self.open equals false, and then I'll just put in an else. If it's already closed, we can just tell them, be like, self.results equals already closed. Compliant. If self.open, self.results equals already open, else we will go self.suck equals socket dot socket, self.suck dot connect self.ip port. That's why we saved those. And self.open equals true. Okay. Great. So we have a way to close and open the client at will when we import it in. That's really good. And then the final little bit and piece that we needed to add in was that self.quit function for the client handler. Because remember, back with the server, if we were deleting a client, we did client.quit. So what we need to do is we make one final function. Check the time here. Oh, damn. Def quit. And we will do self.quit equals true. And I will make a variable up here. Self.quit equals false. And it will run while message is not equal to right quit, or self.quit does not equal true. Okay? Easy peasy. So if we want it to quit, it'll just quit. But the important thing is about this, all right? It'll finish the last command given to it. That's why I did it this way. So if I give it self.quit and turn this true, it will only check if that's true when it gets back up to here. To get back up to the while loop, it has to finish whatever it's doing, right? Because if I told it to just forcibly, nope, just end it, quit, 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 and it's in the middle of transferring, uploading, or downloading files, it can cause file corruption because we didn't close the file safely. So that's a little thing we're going to do there. So I'm going to pause it. I'm going to test to make sure all of this works, and then I'll come back to you if we have any errors that I need to fix. All right, see you in a sec. Hey guys, all right, back. Whoa, that's for something else. But as you can see, I've been testing it out a bit. It's working now. There was only a handful of errors. They're little minor things. As you can see, I have 3 clients going on right now. One was just playing around with the command line. One was just doing whatever. And one was doing some file downloading and such. I made it so every time a new client comes, it displays all the clients. So that's obviously working. Great. So let's go over the minor errors that I found. I made a little list so I can remember them. So back in server, I had to import threading. Forgot to do that at the top, just where it says threading.thread. Check. There was a capital P in port right here. It was a capital P, and it's got to be a lowercase. The next one is oh yeah, oh yeah, right. Client for the message here. I just changed. I separated because I want to do different things. If you put in nothing, I don't want it to close the client. Before it was or and it would just continue. But now if you put in write quit, I want it to close the client. So I just made message have its own little thing. That's not an error. Just something I kind of changed. It would have been one if I had seen it or been testing it. Down here, I need self.results. By the way, I don't think I talked about this in the previous video. When they're sending back things, like when I call the dir command, and you're on like Windows 32, that sends back a ton of, System 32 or somewhere in your computer that sends back a huge list of files. I'm just having it so it sends, the server sends the size of the results, and then this guy receives that size amount. Since we're not working with files, it's okay if I don't send and receive in like 1024-bit amounts. You can see it on this end real quick. Somewhere around here. Oh yeah, and send data, right. And send data. It sends the size, so send the size of it. It gets the size and sends the in size, right? But if it sends these guys too quick, they'll get padded on the back of each other, and when he reads in, he'll read them both as one message, and that's really bad. So what I do is I pad this guy using zfill, just pads them to zeros all the way, so it's like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then the size, all the way up to 1024 bytes. So that when the client reads in 1024 bytes, he's only going to read in the size. So even if they're stuck together on the back of one message, he'll be okay. And then he'll just read in the rest of it. So that, yeah, okay. In client, there was a moment. Yeah, right here, it needs to be self.sock.connect. I had just sock. And then there was one other moment somewhere where it was just results instead of self.results. I believe it was down here. I think it was when I was printing it. I think I was just printing the word results. And then there was one print statement in client handler that I had never taken out. It's not an error or anything. It was in receive file when I was doing some testing when there was a bug and I wasn't sure whether it was receiving the command correctly. I put a print statement just saying downloading in here, just so I know that it actually triggered this function call. And I think that was all the errors. You can see we have a bunch of clients connected right now. Yeah, we got a bunch of clients connected. It's working and everything. And then we'll upload files. Boom. Not so hard. So it's all that stuff is working. It looks really good right now, and they're importable. And the final thing I did was I may have changed. No, we're good. Yeah, so that's basically it for cleaning up the code and making them all classes and make them importable to, just gotta save everything, making it importable into other pieces of code. So next video we'll do a little bit of error handling, and after that I'll show you actually how to, look, I'm wrapping this blanket. I totally forgot I had wrapped myself in this blanket. After that I'll show you how to put on like a Raspberry and forward some ports on your home network, and then you can give it a static IP address and you can connect to it anywhere. Heck, maybe we can fit it into one bit if the error handling isn't too fast. The error handling is going to be pretty small. It's just going to be if your file's not found, basically. It's going to be real quick. So probably maybe get in that next video. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.